Welcome back now with the news in detail. United States President Donald Trump says it looks like Iran was behind Saturday's attacks on Saudi oil facilities. But he has said military retaliation for the drone strikes is not yet under consideration. Talking to reporters at the White House, Trump said the very large attack could be met with a much bigger response. Trump said he will send Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to Riyadh to discuss an appropriate reaction. Meanwhile, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg has expressed extreme concern over the potential consequences of the attack. But Iran has dismissed the allegations, saying Saudi Arabia wants war to distract from its internal problems. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani says recent attacks on Saudi oil facilities are a reciprocal measure by Yemeni people against aggression. Addressing a news conference in Ankara, Rouhani said Yemenis are exercising their right to self-defense. Earlier, the Saudi-led coalition said the initial findings show Iranian weapons were used in the attacks. Coalition spokesman Colonel Turki al-Malki says the probe revealed the attacks did not originate in Yemen. The U.S. says the international oil market is resilient and will respond positively to the attack on Saudi Arabia's oil industry. Speaking at the International Atomic Energy Agency headquarters, U.S. Energy Secretary Rick Perry blamed Iran for the attack. Perry condemned the attack while calling Iran's behavior intolerable. He said the U.S. is prepared to release oil from its strategic reserve.
Despite Iran's malign efforts, we are very confident that the market is resilient and will respond positively. President Trump has authorized the release of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, if that is needed, and my department stands ready to respond.
While Iran has denied the allegations that it carried out the attack. Now, Russia has offered advanced weaponry to Saudi Arabia following Saturday's attacks on its oil installations. President Vladimir Putin says it is up to Riyadh to make what he called the wise decision to buy leading Russian air defense systems. At a conference in Ankara, Putin pointed to the purchase of the Russian systems by Iran and Turkey as evidence of their effectiveness. He said the attacks on Saudi Arabia were not discussed during his talks on Syria with the presidents of Turkey and Iran. Putin said the Yemen conflict should be resolved through negotiations between all sides. U.S. President Donald Trump says he will soon meet the Prime Ministers of Pakistan and India to discuss tensions over Kashmir. Talking to the media in Washington, Trump said progress has been made to reduce tensions between the two countries. Trump's schedule suggests he will meet Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan later this month at the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. Last week, the U.S. president repeated his offer to mediate the Kashmir dispute between Pakistan and India. Relations between the South Asian neighbors have been tense since India illegally annexed occupied Kashmir on August 5th. Meanwhile, Islamabad says the Kartarpur corridor for Indian Sikh pilgrims will open on November 9th. Pilgrims will be able to use the opening to attend celebrations marking the 550th anniversary of Guru Nanak, the religion's founder. Project Director Atif Majid says 76 immigration counters have been set up to issue visit visas to 5,006 pilgrims a day.
Alhamdulillah, we have achieved 90% of the achieved target, our desired target. And because we have to complete the phase 1 by 9th November, when we're going to have another inauguration, inshallah, before the Babaji's celebration, the 550th celebration.
Moving on, a Taliban delegation has visited Iran to discuss the recently suspended Afghan peace process. Iran state media reports the Taliban talks in Tehran followed a similar meeting with the Russian government in Moscow. Taliban spokesperson Suhail Shaheen says a delegation led by senior leader Abdul Salam Hanafi has met senior foreign ministry officials. Shaheen says the Afghan peace process and the security of Iranian projects in Afghanistan were discussed at the meeting. Iran, Turkey and Russia have agreed to reduce ceasefire violations in Syria's Idlib province. After a trilateral meeting in Ankara, Russian President Vladimir Putin said lasting peace in Syria can be achieved by political and diplomatic efforts. Putin said all foreign troops should be pulled out of Syria when peace is restored. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan said the summit has paved the way to form a constitutional committee for Syria. He said up to 3 million refugees can return to a planned safe zone in northern Syria if it is extended from Turkey's border to Deir al-Zor and Raqqa. Erdogan also said support for militant groups under the pretense of fighting ISIS is unacceptable. Well, Israelis are voting today to elect a new government, and the snap elections were called after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu failed to cobble together a coalition after polls in April. Locked in a tight race against Benny Gantz and with corruption charges hanging over him, Netanyahu is fighting for political survival. In a last-ditch bid to attract far-right votes, Netanyahu has pledged to annex most of the Palestinian West Bank if re-elected. The pledge has been met with outrage from most Muslim countries. Former military chief Gantz had no previous political experience before declaring his candidacy in December. About 6.4 million Israeli voters are eligible to cast ballots for 120 seats in the Knesset. 31 parties are contesting today's elections. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Eshtai says his government will challenge Israel in the international courts. The action will be over Israel's exploitation of Palestinian land in the Jordan Valley. Prime Minister Eshtai says there are 35 Jewish settlements in the Jordan Valley and the area north of the Dead Sea. Around 9,000 settlers live in the zone, and at the end of the cabinet meeting, Prime Minister said Palestinians will continue living in the valley. He said Israeli settlements and settlers are illegal and have to leave Palestinian land. Earlier, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced he would annex the West Bank's Jordan Valley if re-elected. Meanwhile, European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker has asked Britain to present workable proposals to replace the Brexit backstop. Juncker's remarks came during Brexit talks with Prime Minister Boris Johnson in Luxembourg. In a statement, the Commission says it is willing to examine whether such proposals meet the objectives of a backstop. Prime Minister Johnson's office says exit talks between Britain and the European Union will intensify. It says the British leader has ruled out any further delay to Brexit beyond 31st of October.
Yes, there is a good chance of a deal. Yes, I can see the shape of it. Everybody can see roughly what could be done. But it will require movement, and it will require the system by which the EU can control the UK after we leave, the so-called backstop, to go from that treaty. And that needs to happen.
Well, Johnson also met his Luxembourg counterpart Xavier Bettel, but cancelled a briefing with reporters due to protest. Now, still in Britain, the Supreme Court will today hear petitions calling for the government's suspension of Parliament to be declared illegal. In the emergency hearing, 11 of the court's 12 judges will consider the case. Two politically charged petitions accuse Prime Minister Boris Johnson of breaking the law by proroguing the House of Commons. They say Johnson advised the Queen to disband Parliament in order to stifle moves to block a no-deal Brexit on October 31st. Earlier, the London High Court agreed with the House of Commons suspension, but Scotland's Court of Appeal later ruled it illegal. Now in France, hundreds of professionals are marching against government pension reforms in Paris. Government plan aims to merge France's 42 pension systems into a single system. The universal points-based pension system will wipe out advantageous pensions for a wide range of professions. Prime Minister Edouard Philippe says the new system will ensure equal rights for everyone. Lawyers, doctors and pilots have opposed the move and want to maintain the status quo. These groups say they contribute more in pension funds and do not want their share to be absorbed by a uniform scheme. France has announced a $66 million aid package for Sudan. Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian also offered to help the country tackle its foreign debt. Le Drian held a press conference alongside his Sudanese counterpart Asma Abdallah in Khartoum. He said the bilateral talks focused on fixing the Sudanese economic crisis. He also said France will lobby for Sudan to be removed from the US list of countries it considers state sponsors of terrorism. The listing prevents Sudan from receiving much-needed financial aid from international donors. More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back now. A UN report says Myanmar should be held responsible for the genocide of its Muslim Rohingya minority. Thousands of Rohingya were killed and over 700,000 were forced to flee to Bangladesh in a military crackdown in 2017. The report added remaining 600,000 Rohingya continue to face the threat of genocide. It also called for the prosecution of Army Chief Min Aung Hlaing and other top generals. Myanmar's military spokesman Zaw Min Chun called the team's finding one-sided. Moving on, 26-year-old Nigerian woman Gloria dreamed of a better life. She left for Europe with 4 other women. Only 2 of the friends survived the torturous journey to Libya before becoming stranded there. Find out what happened in this report.
Gloria once dreamed of an international career in fashion, but since her return from Libya to Benin City in Nigeria, she has been working as a seamstress on an assembly line in a tracksuit workshop, earning just $40 a month. Like many Nigerians who try to escape poverty, Gloria's journey to Europe was cut short in Libya.
My dad just had the belief that if I travel out, I'll be able to help the family. So when I came back, it's only him I told that look at what I went through. As they asked me, I tell them, it's normal.
Like Gloria, 14,000 young Nigerians stuck in Libya have returned home since 2017, thanks to a United Nations programme. The state of Edo provides them with about €100 to get back on their feet. The state has also created training programmes to encourage reintegration.
It's a priority for us to give returnees and young people that could be potentially migrating jobs and opportunities that they are interested in, things that they would like to do, and not just things they would like to do. We don't want them just engaged. We want them to be able to see potential for growth.
In Nigeria, more than half of under 35s are unemployed. TK tried to reach Europe in 2017. Despite training to become a butcher, he has been unemployed since his return. Today, he lives in this tiny 2-room apartment that he shares with his wife and daughter. More than 60,000 Nigerians are still stranded in Libya. The vast majority are still in detention centres or in the hands of traffickers and local militias.
In Thailand, environmentalist Rylin Satidansaran, also known as Lily, has taken up the challenge to clean her country. Little Lily started her anti-plastic campaign at the age of 8. Bangkok's young activist wants Thailand free of single-use plastic by 2020. More in this report.
This area of Bangkok is known as the city's green lung, but it's suffocating under plastic, like much of the country. Lily is just 12, yet she's leading the fight to clean up the city, inspired by young Swedish climate change superstar Greta Thunberg.
Greta is really important to me because what she symbolizes. She says that kids can make a difference. She wants everybody to do something, and she got so many people together.
Thailand's the world's 6th biggest polluter of the oceans. Every Thai person uses on average 8 plastic bags a day. Lily is taking her message to the top. She has led several sit-ins outside the government house, met with business leaders, and she spoke at this UN conference.
It is hard, but I I like to be positive about it because there's always hope. We can always fix something. If there's a problem, we fix it.
Lily's goal is to ban single-use plastic bags by 2022. Her first victory, managing to convince a supermarket chain in Bangkok not to offer plastic bags 1 day a week.
Well, in Washington, teenage climate activist Greta Thunberg has received Amnesty International's Ambassador of Conscience Award for 2019. The award celebrates individuals and groups working to protect human rights. The 16-year-old Swede with Asperger's syndrome runs a movement called Fridays for Future to spread climate change awareness. She has been skipping school every Friday to protest outside the Swedish parliament, demanding action to tackle the climate crisis. The movement has now spread via social media to young people in other countries.
I think there is an awakening going on. Even though it is slow, the pace is picking up and the debate is shifting.
As the war in Syria goes on, the country's economy can no longer sustain its people. Shops that once bustled with activity are now wrecked, reminders of happier days in the past. This report has more.
The civil war has battered Syria's finances and depleted its foreign reserves. A flurry of international sanctions imposed on President Bashar al-Assad's regime and associated businessmen at the start of the war has compounded the situation. Syrian media puts this down to a high demand for dollars in neighboring Lebanon, whose banking system is used by Syrian importers for their own transactions.
The increase in the value of the dollar makes the Syrian pound increase 20, 30, or 40 Syrian pounds per day. Prices change every hour. So the customer who came yesterday and bought at such price can come back today and will buy the same thing for more.
Shop owners say business has slowed since the value of the Syrian pound plunged to its lowest level this month. The black market value of the Syrian pound on 8th of September stood at 691 against the dollar. The following day, it climbed to 610. When the 8 years civil war began, the rate stood at around 48 pounds to the dollar.
The variation of the exchange rate means that when I want to buy 50 kg of this or that product, I lose 10 kg and I am only able to buy 40 kg for the same price. There is no stability, so we have to wait a bit for it to buy. But if you wait, your store slowly becomes empty.
In the Kurdish majority city of Kamishli in northeast Syria, the situation is just as grim. Last week, the government agreed to take legal measures against foreign currency dealers who manipulate exchange rates. But no one knows for sure when the situation will improve for ordinary people.
A strike by 50,000 General Motor workers has brought factories and warehouses to a grinding halt. Staff from over 40 plants walked out when talks between the company and the United Auto Workers Union hit an impasse. Investors see a General Motors credit rating could drop to junk bond status if the strike lasts more than a week. The strike was called when the union and management failed to reach an agreement over pay and conditions. One of the biggest sticking points is GM's decision to close 4 car assembly plants in the US. This is the largest industrial action to hit the car maker in more than 10 years. International oil prices have been trimmed after a market panic about Saudi supplies saw them surge 14% yesterday. Global benchmark Brent futures are trading about 1% lower, while US crude is down 1.5%. The Shanghai Composite has lost 1% on fears of conflict between the US and Iran. The Hang Seng Index is also 1% lower after Hong Kong's economic outlook was downgraded by Moody's. The Nikkei 225 Tokyo is flat following a US announcement it has agreed to trade deal with Japan. Gold and silver prices are steady as nervous investors maintain funds in safe havens. Now let's have a look at the weather update. With the weather update, we come to the end of this bulletin. For more news and updates, keep watching Indus News.